What's up, baby Human Geo? Woohoo! I'm super stoked, you guys. I haven't done a Human Geo stream since October. Yeah, man. Dustin Fowler has been killing it all year. If you watch the replays for Human Geography, you'll see me teaching like migration, population, all those early ones. But I'm back because Dustin's out tonight. Also next week, so we're going to talk about cities tonight, all the different city types, and next week all the different issues that arise in cities. So I'm super stoked. Human Geography is easily one of my favorite classes. I just think it's so much fun. So as I'm going to get set up in a second, but what I would love for you guys to do, let's see, if your stream's not working, try refreshing. In the chat, I want to know where you are right now. Where are you located? Me personally, I'm streaming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, where the Fiveable house currently is. As we're growing, getting super excited for APs. I'm a little bit burned because I was just in San Diego, and I'm jealous of all of you who are still in places. Looks like I got a lot of San Antonio, still in places where there's like sun. Because I just came back to Madison and it is snowing today. So not super stoked about that. All right, dope. So we got a lot of San Antonio. I'm guessing you guys all know each other, which is awesome. Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. What else we got? Los Angeles. Oh, you guys are all like in the sun. I'm so jealous. All right, so the other thing I want to know from you up front is on a scale of 1 to 5, on that like AP scale, how are you feeling about the Human Geography test? Like if you had it right in front of you. Right, like a 5 would be like, I'm so ready, give it me now, I'm gonna kill it, I can't wait. 1 would be like, can I get like an extra year or something? Let's see where you're at. I'm gonna share my screen so that we can jump right in after that. Application window. All right, 1 second. Share. Move it to like the actual thing. Okay, so, all right, so let's see where you guys are at. You are all over the place. All right, we have a few that are like 7, 10. Yes, love the confidence. Love it. 6. Some of you guys that are feeling like 2s and 3s. It's a good spot to be in. You do have some time left over. You know, you're here right now. The fact that you're here and you're going to study with me tonight shows a lot from you. And I guarantee you will help you out. You know, I'm going to show you like what you need to know in this topic. And for those of you that are feeling like 1s, 0s, oh my God, I saw a -1. If you're feeling like a -1 right now, first of all, deep breath. It's all going to be okay. We're going to get through this all together. But the good news is we've got a lot more streams coming up for you. Okay, so we're live for Human Geo every Thursday at this exact same time. So, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. During exam week, we're going to have extra streams. We've got replays from all the things that we've done already. And that question is there going to be a Kahoot? Even better, our mobile app is dropping next week. If you haven't already seen our new web app, it's just like a website where you can see like what we've built, and there's a lot of free stuff in there for how to study, and all of our trivia games are going to be uploaded in there. So there's going to be even better than a Kahoot. And the app itself is free to download. Everything that we do while we're live is free, so you can watch streams, you can play trivia games. And so we're going to be doing some really massive trivia games coming up that you'll be able to play live. And so it's not going to be through Kahoot. It's going to be better because we're not going to have all those Kahoot bots. It's not going to crash when too many people join. It's really like made for this exact reason. So we're really excited for you guys to be able to see that. You can go into the web app. You can play around with some stuff, tonight even. All right. Okay, so if this is your first time in a Fiveable stream, just as a quick heads up, the chat is for you. Talk to each other, get to know each other, ask each other questions, build study groups. You can join us in our Discord channel, which was posted right at the very beginning. And I'll watch the chat, but sometimes I'm also like teaching. And so if there's a question that you really want me to answer, you want to make sure that I cover it, just pop it in the ask a question spot. And we're getting so close to the exam that if you have a question about really anything, like a specific thing in human geography that you don't understand, put it in there. And I recommend that you guys go in and upvote questions, answer questions if you feel like you know the answer. And I'll be answering questions kind of throughout, right? So I'll sort of jump in and out of answering versus kind of just showing you guys like what you need to know. And I have an FRQ at the end, which I'm gonna really hope there's time for, because this unit isn't so bad. It isn't like too much stuff. All right, we're ready. I'm ready. I know you guys are ready. All right, so you know what? Actually, I'm gonna keep it there. That's all right. You can just see my tabs. All right, so, you know, obviously welcome to Fiveable. If you're not following us on social media, definitely head to Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We've got plenty of things posted for you. We're gonna be doing a ton of giveaways over the next few weeks. You know, we're right in AP season and really like ramping up. And so, you know, give us a follow. We're posting like infographics and stuff that'll be really useful for you, especially on Instagram. Tweeting out good articles to like get more, and then doing giveaways. So get in there and follow us and join the fun. All right, so we're in the last unit of Unit 7. Put in the chat, what are you studying right now in Human Geo? What's the topic? Not the chapter number, not the you know, unit number. I don't have all those perfectly memorized, but what's the topic that you're studying right now, like that you just learned about this week or you just took a test on this week? Awesome. So we're perfectly positioned. So urban cities, urban models, awesome. Okay, so basically the essential question of this topic, you know, this unit is all about cities, but tonight is specifically about urban land use and how that's done and the models that the different cities around the world have. But the essential question is, how do geographers describe and analyze the structure and function of cities? Right, so what are the words that geographers use in order to really show what's going on? What does a city look like? Why does it look like that? And what function does it serve, right? How does each part of the city support the other parts, right? How do people operate within those different parts of the city? So that's really what we're looking at tonight. That's our focus. And so before we like go into all the different models and all the different, you know, cities around the world, I just wanted to show you like this map that I came across. It's actually let me use a little review. What type of map is this? What type of map would you classify this as? I think all the way back to Unit 1. What's that one? What's that map where the different, I'll let you guys think on that one. But let me show you around this map. So the number of people in the world that live in cities has gone up dramatically in the last 20 years and definitely in the last century. And so, you know, when we're thinking about how cities look, it's truly like where most people live, right? You know, obviously there's so much importance in rural lands and in agricultural land use, but this is like where most of the people live. And so you can see, like, I mean, this is massive, you know, like 42% of China lives in cities, 29% of India, 81% of the US. That's such a big number. It's crazy. So like, you know, you can really see like there's just a lot of people. Yeah, so like graduated symbol seems right, cartogram, it is kind of both, right? It's sort of shifting the size based on the data. You can just see like just how many people live in cities, and this is I don't know the exact year that this map was published, but this is fairly recent. And so if this had been done, this exact same thing 100 years ago, it would look totally different. Right? People didn't necessarily all live in cities. Really, during the Industrial Revolution is when you get that like first real shift. Even before, like in the 1700s in Europe, and then more in the 1800s, and as industrialization spread. And now today, what we're really seeing is massive growth in cities, especially in places like Africa and Southeast Asia, in Latin America. And so we're going to look at all of those things. Oops. That slide wasn't a thing. Okay, so let's start with the Central Business District, because this is going to be sort of our anchor for the entire night, right? Because all of the cities are based around this like CBD, right? This is your like downtown, right? So when you think about wherever you live, the downtown area, it sort of fits into these factors, and this more, this is like really thinking about like big cities, but these are the sort of things that you tend to see. First, there's like an above and a below ground, or you've got skyscrapers in most, right, like central business districts, with the exception of like European cities, which we'll talk about later. But this is where your big buildings are. But then you also have sort of like an underground city too, right? You have metros and subways and parking garages and sometimes like underground shopping centers. Right? There's like a lot of different things that are happening underground as well as above ground. It also tends to be where the like historic center is. Maybe it's like where the city started. Maybe it's where the most historic, like important buildings are in the city. That tends to be in Europe, but it's also true in a lot of other cities as well. Right? If you think about, like Boston, you have all the old cities. Or looks like most of you guys are from San Antonio, so I actually don't know San Antonio that well. I wish I did, otherwise I would like use that as the example. But I'm guessing, do you see this in San Antonio? I'd say so. Yeah, right. Like, do you see like, you kind of know where that downtown area is. You see, that's where the buildings are. Maybe there are some like historic buildings there. Land tends to be more expensive in that downtown area, which is really good for businesses that generate a lot of money, right? So businesses that are in like finances, like legal, things like that, like things that I can pay for the super expensive, office because what I'm doing generates a lot of money. It's not good for manufacturing. Manufacturing is better outside of the city because this land is very, very expensive. And because the land is so expensive, you see like high density housing. So, we might build an apartment building that's massive, that fits a lot of people in it. And that's because there isn't that much space to be spread out. And the land that you're building that, apartment building on is very expensive. And so it's better to be able to be able to sell more apartments. Yeah, there you go. Yep. So like the Alamo would be like sort of downtown. And then you have medical center. Right. So every city has that like CBD, that central business district. It looks a little bit different across the world. It looks a little bit different. I actually want to show you. Let's just do some like Google Earth, because why not? So I'm from Boston, and so this is just the example that I pulled up. But and you know what? I'll just show you. I'll just do San Antonio too. You can kind of see, right? Like there's a very clear, like this would be your CBD in Boston. You can see the big buildings. You know that these buildings will be really expensive to rent out. And then as you zoom out, you start to see like what the outside of the city is all sort of built around that central location. But then you see the change, right? You see the shift. Like look at how these buildings are. These houses are much smaller, much more compact. There's a little bit more space around them, right? Like this looks like they're really like on top of each other, but they have, driveways and backyards, whereas in here you wouldn't. In here you're downtown. All right, so jump back in. Okay, so basically you have in this presentation, we're really looking at what cities around the world look like. So there are 3 different models of North American cities that we're going to go through, and then we're going to quickly hit on like the other places in the world, what their cities look like, what the factors are that they're based on, and then at the end we'll sort of talk about some of the like challenges that these things present. So remember, models and theories, and actually I want to share with you this. I wrote this blog post at the beginning of the year, so as you're studying, I think this will be really useful. I put together 30 AP Human Geography models that you should know, with little, just like really quick descriptions of like, here's what you need to know about them. And so these are in order of units. So at the bottom here, we're going to talk about these ones, these just like the city models, right? But I think that's really useful. So you use it, study with it. All right, so you've got the most basic model of a North American city would be this like concentric zones model. This is Burgess, where you basically have the CBD in the middle, that like downtown area, and then as you go outward from the city, the different uses of that land change. So in this one, you would have this like sort of transition zone. This is where you might have kind of like abandoned buildings or factories or like lower class living that are, they're close to downtown because that's where there is opportunity, but they can't afford those high-rise buildings. And so they instead live in this ring. And then the third one would be more of like working class zone, right? So this would be like, they're still working sort of in the city, but they're living in separate housing. It's more of like big apartment buildings that aren't the like high rises, but can fit like a whole lot of people. And then you've got the like residences, the suburbs, right? This is where people have a backyard. And then finally, even further suburban areas, this is where people are generally commuting in. So like people out in this like furthest ring tend to be the highest class. So you have like upper class in the very, very inside the city, maybe potentially inside the business district, and then all the way on the outside. Right, so you're just sort of surrounded by layers of industry. The most wealth is furthest away. And it's just a matter of just like resources, right? Just like getting into the city, it's expensive to commute. And so if you live closer, then you don't need to do that. So this is like, it's very simple, right? It's a really simple look at cities because, you can apply this to like Chicago or New York, all the big cities, and potentially like San Antonio. But it's very simple. So there's issues with it, right? Cities don't fit perfectly into these rings. And so after, this was sort of the first model of like, let's think about what a city looks like. Here's the model. And now this is going to influence what comes after this, like how geographers are analyzing cities. And so the second one is Hoyt's sector model. And so it's similar, right? It's like you still have this like CBD, you have that central downtown area, and it's surrounded by industry. But rather than seeing it as just like concentric circles, Hoyt is looking at the impact that transportation had, the transportation lines coming in and out of that central area, and where people then move in relation to that, right? So if you remember, you live in here because it's cheapest to get into here. But now that you have built out subways, I don't need to live right here anymore, right? And so where people live can sort of expand out of that, really following the subway lines. So, and in both cases, right? So you have high class, right? Like this would be like an upper class residence. All around them would be like middle class, lower class, maybe on this side of town. And then you have like sort of factories and industry cutting through this like working class area, right? And that would make sense. It's closer to where they live. And all of these things are, by the way, are very much influenced by politics, by like racial laws that we will definitely talk about next week when we talk about urban issues. You really do see, you do actually see some pretty dividing lines in cities on purpose, right? And so like this would be like Chicago. Does it look exactly like this little nice circle? No, but it is a very similar thing. You have the CBD, you have, you can trace where people live based on transportation lines. You can see sort of just like pretty drastic lines around neighborhoods, around who lives in those neighborhoods. And it's all based on a couple factors, based on like where the work is and who's doing the work. And then also based on like where people were allowed to buy houses, right? It's as simple as literally not allowing Black families to buy houses in certain neighborhoods, as white families not wanting to buy houses in certain neighborhoods. And so you get these like very, racially segregated cities. And I'll show a picture of that later of, what did I pull? I forget which city I pulled, but I'll show that later. All right, so the other type of model for North America is, again, like you can just kind of see how this is like another evolution of it, right? It's like, okay, we have concentric circles, that works. But then if we go a step further, like it's more complicated than that. And if you go even a step further than that, and you look at kind of where things have progressed even further, this is the model, right? So this would be galactic cities. This is like, you have that CBD, right? So here's like that old version of this. But because people have moved outward, there's sort of like a decline of the inner city. And the things that you needed to do in the downtown area, the shopping, the business, any of those like services that exist there have started to now pop up in the burbs, right? So you have these what are called edge cities. So this is Atlanta, where you can see like, if you live out here, you don't need to go into the CBD all the time. There may even be a huge industry right outside of it. A huge company that employs thousands of people. And so that then you have all these stores, these like big box retail. You can find your Best Buy, you can find your Target, your supermarkets, you can find all of those things. So you don't even really need to come into the downtown area, short of like some bigger events that might be happening by my subdivision. Yeah, totally. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely like happening in other places, right? Like, I mean, where's a city around you that like has sort of a suburb that has a lot of things to do in it? And so then people don't necessarily need to come downtown anymore. Maybe you have an example in the place near you. Near me, it would be like, actually like where I grew up outside of Boston is a town called Marlborough, which is right next to Framingham. And Framingham is very much that. Everything you need is in Framingham. There's tons of huge industries. You don't need to go into downtown Boston. I don't need to commute into there. I could work and live in the suburbs, just like, most of my friends' families did. And we would just go into the downtown area just for, like a fun night out or like a special thing. But you didn't need to go into there. Okay, so what does the rest of the world look like? This is how like human geography tends to be, right? It's like, this is what it's done in America, and this is the rest of the world. Let me answer this question first. I'm just gonna go backwards. Okay, so the CBD isn't the most wealthy. Doesn't it have a lot of importance though? Yeah, yes, and like, a lot of the money is in the central business district, right? So, think about like, think about the cost of living. Like some people that want to buy big houses are gonna live outside of the city because you can have a lot of land there. But there are also people that live downtown in like really nice penthouses, right? but it's usually like a financial center of the city, potentially like an educational center. There may be like some really big colleges there, really big industry, right? Like I'm trying to think of like all the different, think of like New York City, right? Where you have like Manhattan and like Times Square. There's a ton of money in there. But a lot of the really rich people in New York live a little bit outside of the city. It's quieter. You can buy this whole nice giant house, and then you just commute inside. And so what you tend to see right inside the city are a lot of people who don't have a lot of wealth because it is too expensive to commute in and out. And so it's easier to live like really close. So yes, it's usually where there is a lot of incredibly important industry, but also, what was I going to say? Important industry and important services, right? Like the things that people need are generally like in the downtown area. Okay, so this question of like, let's see maps of the functional zonation of various cities to see whether any of them actually look like the concentric zones or sectors. Yeah, and I was actually trying to like pull these things just to sort of like see some. All right, let's look up San Antonio. Google Earth, you guys. This is a hell of a way to study. We're just gonna move away from Boston, move over to San Antonio. It's not gonna be perfect. Like that's the thing is like, this map it's not gonna line up perfectly, but I bet that it is very, very similar. I bet it has aspects of all of them, right? And so you have your downtown area. Like we just kind of zoom in. You can like see it, right? Like even if we're all the way up here, you can see. Like I don't know San Antonio. I went there once several years ago, but I can already see like, okay, if I want to find the downtown area, well, I'm going to the middle, right? So it's almost that like concentric thing is coming back. I can see the differences, right? You can see the difference of what this area might look like versus this area, right? Versus this area. Like look at the difference of that, right? Someone that might live out in the outskirts of San Antonio might work downtown, but they've got a huge house outside. Let's see. Yeah, right. If we just are zooming all the way in, this is definitely your downtown area. I'm gonna switch the view a little bit. All right, there it is, right? There's your like river walk, right? The Alamos down there. So you have like historic things. You also have big industries, right? You can even see like, let's see, and like who works in these buildings, right? People that are generating a lot of money. And then I'm sure too, it's the same thing similar to the multiple nuclei. So if you look outside of the city, you have, what's popped up is that as people have moved out, and I'm guessing that this freeway here, this 410 freeway that surrounds the city is sort of your like city limits, right? And so as you zoom out, the people who live on the outskirts of that freeway have developed edge cities, right? Building out 410. You can see your house? Nice. Yeah, right. So like as people are building outwards, there I don't like you would know better than me. Like of the cities out here, which of these cities have become like centers all on their own? Right? There's a lot going on there. Like there's a lot of different places for people to work. There's maybe good schools. There's lots of services that they need. Think about some of those like, I'm not sure which one would be the one to point out, but that that would be your edge city, and so they're just sort of next to it, and I'm sure if you just like zoom out even further, it'll pop up. And San Antonio is so close to like Austin that it's kind of an interesting thing because you have two major cities fairly close to each other, relatively. And so what do the cities in between them look like, right? Like San Marcos is probably quite the edge city in between that has everything you sort of need. So if you live here, you don't have to go to Austin or have to go to San Antonio. You have what you need. So that would be my guess. Just based on like, how I'm thinking like a geographer in a city that I don't know, but that's sort of like how the models would be applied. All right, so if we look around the world to other regions, they're very, very similar. So, I think when you first look at like, oh, I gotta know all these like city models, it feels like a lot. Let me actually just click there answering. So it feels like a lot in terms of all the different models to know, but they're really not all that different, right? So if we look at Latin America, this is the like Griffin Ford model. You have the CBD. It's very similar to like the sector model, right? Where you can see that there's sort of this, it's not just like a simple concentric circles. There's kind of a lot of pieces to it. But one of the things that's really different in Latin America is that the further away you are from the CBD, the lower quality housing becomes. And that's totally different than in America. Because in America, the further away you get from downtown, the more you get into the suburbs, the nicer the houses get. But this is completely the opposite. So in Latin American cities, because on the outskirts, there is less access to transportation, to electricity, to services, to water even. You don't get wealthy people living far away. They live right in the city limits. And so these disamenity zones, this is a good term to know. These are places in the city that are really not connected to a lot of city services. And sometimes they are sort of like hotbeds for gang violence, or what I'm going to show you is like some of these, like this is a favela in Brazil, right? These like shanty towns, they're very, very, very poor areas. And so in Brazil, these favelas are very much like built on top of each other. They don't always have access to electricity, to plumbing. There's definitely not good education and medicine, medical services in these areas. Very, very lower class, with a poor quality of life, just in terms of like, kind of like movement and access to resources. And so these regions, we have these in the United States, like shanty towns, right? So if you've ever like driven through the downtown area, and you might see like almost like a homeless like pop-up, that like I used to live in Oakland in California, and those were there a lot, where you would see these like, what do they call them? These sort of makeshift neighborhoods, right? Where people are sort of tent cities, right? So people living on tents, and this is where they live, and obviously they're not getting access to a lot of the things that even just a few blocks away people have access to, right? Electricity, plumbing, any type of service, like even just having an address, right? You don't necessarily have an address, and so therefore you're not getting access to the same things. And so this exists in every city, right? You have like homelessness, and we'll talk more about that next week when we talk about urban issues. But wanted to really point this out as specific to Latin America, these terms, because these are a lot bigger than what we see in the United States. Okay, so if we keep we keep going around the world, and I'm going to get back on Google Earth in a second. We're going to go do some traveling. In Europe, the European cities grew very slowly, and there was no planning. And it's the same thing in like East Coast cities. So like Boston, like New York, like Philadelphia. They're very similar to these European cities because they were settled by Europeans, right? And they didn't sit down and think, let's plan this city out. They just sort of started building it, and then had to sort of keep adapting as technology improved. And so you'll see like really narrow streets and historic centers in the midst of them. And so, for example, Let's go to, give me a European city. Give me any city in Europe. London, Berlin, Lisbon. Oh, love Lisbon. I'm gonna go to London. Go to London. We're gonna zoom out. We're going out from San Antonio over to London. And so in London, what you're gonna see is absolute craziness when it comes to streets. Like, this was not planned out. You know, like if you think about in San Antonio, you might have street names that make sense. There's, you know, there's grids. There's maybe they're numbered 1 through whatever, or they're lettered or something like that. London makes 0 sense, right? So look at all the way the streets are. If we just kind of zoom into, you know, some of these downtown areas, it's like crazy. It's just complete craziness, you know. So the downtown area in London isn't necessarily skyscrapers. It's not like New York. It's not like Chicago. The downtown area in London is more about, you know, Buckingham Palace, right? It's these museums, and you can just see the difference of it. It's just a lot more flat. It's a lot more about the historic importance of this area, right? You know, you can see like all of this different space. Another one that's really good, I'm gonna just take you to really quick, is Prague. Prague is one you can really see that difference. Let's see. England, Warsaw. Oh yeah, Warsaw is a good one too. All right, let's go to Prague. So Prague is in the Czech Republic. Super pretty. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so you can see, like, you just look at the streets. These streets make no sense. They were not designed with anything in mind but, like, you know, horses and cows going through, not cars, right? These are developed very slowly. These are old cities. And so you can see, like, you can just see the difference, you know? Like, look at downtown Prague. You don't have skyscrapers. In fact, you're not allowed to have skyscrapers. Like, there are limits in terms of what can be built because they want to protect this look, right? You can just kind of see, like, there's clearly a that you have to use if you are in the downtown area. Okay. All right, so European, narrow streets, historic centers. African cities sometimes have 2 CBDs because of what existed before they were colonized and then what existed after they were colonized. And so sometimes you'll see a difference in terms of like, you know, more traditional market area versus a more like administrative, you know, like big streets area where like the Europeans came in and set up shop. Let's go. All right, give me a city in Africa. There are so many. Lagos. Ooh, Lagos is a good one. Massive. It's so big. All right, we're going out of Czech Republic into West Africa. We are now in Nigeria. All right. I've never been to Lagos, and I've never done the Google Maps here. But let's take a look. Just take a look at what it looks like. I mean, you're just gonna see that it's a lot different, right? So it doesn't look like Prague. It doesn't look like San Antonio. It doesn't look like, you know, Chicago. It looks like it's had a completely different history. There was, you know, I'm sure that there is a downtown in Lagos that is more historic center, and that there's also a downtown Lagos that has much more European influence. Let's see, Cape Town. Cairo is a good one. Yeah, let's go to, whoops. So Cairo. Yeah, I love this. I love how it just like jumps up. There we are in the Nile. Okay, so, okay, first of all, just the fact that like the geography of it, if you just like zoom out, you know, it's like, here's the lands where people live because there's water. Here's the lands where way less people live. Look at the difference, look at the line. It's crazy. Okay, so if we go zoom straight into Cairo, and Cairo is also an Islamic city, so it kind of goes into the next one, where it is, the centers of Cairo are also going to be around mosques. So there's for sure going to be, you know, okay, so here, this area right here would be more of a colonial city center, right? You can even see like the bigger line, the bigger roads. You know, here's the Embassy of the United States. And then you have probably over here, oh no, Egyptian Museum. And then, you know, maybe somewhere on the other, in another part of town, there's more of like a traditional market. You know, I don't know exactly where it is. I'm trying to find it. Maybe over here, right? You know, maybe over here, where there's just a totally different look, right? And so this is exactly what you see in Africa, is that you just see that there's clearly like spaces that have, yeah, it looks very cool, right? While we're in Cairo, we may as well go to the pyramids really quick. Let's just like zoom out. Yeah, so that's the biggest thing about pyramids of Giza. Okay, let's just go to Giza. So we'll find them. They're there. And they probably look so awesome on Google Earth. All right, there they are. Yeah, they're like literally on the outskirts. Look at that. There they are. There's the pyramids. Huge. There's like 3. The Sphinx is over here. Yeah, there they are. We're on the outskirts of the city. There's a Sphinx. Super cool. But you know, it's not the center of the city by any means. But it's there. Okay, and so like then as we mentioned, so Cairo is very similar. A mosque might be more at the city center, with also you'll find like public services there, right? Like things related to education, to medicine, any of the things that people need, community services, tend to like exist around the mosque. It's a communal place where people go. And then Southeastern Asian cities. There tends to be a difference in where like the CBD is based on like a former colonial port, right? So if we go to, you know, Hong Kong, totally different. This is fun. We're doing like a whole like journey around the world here. Okay, so Hong Kong used to be British. Looks like I'm freezing a little bit. No. There we go. I'm making Google work. Okay, so let's go to Hong Kong. Let's zoom in. You know, at Hong Kong, you're gonna see like the ports themselves are what are like the center of the city. Massive skyscrapers. It's not really about the like historical city center, even though there are like historical buildings there. It's much more about like the actual port, right? This is where the British set up shop in this port. And so because of that, now you have this whole city, this whole like massive city that's sprung up around those areas, right? You can see like all the different buildings and around, like it's massive, it's just huge. All right, let's keep moving. There are a few more things to bring up here. Not too many more, so I'm definitely going to be able to take questions, and we can look really briefly at this FRQ. Okay, so within every city there are local regulations. All right, and so I brought this up a little bit earlier, and we're going to talk a lot more about this next week. But basically, just around how land can be used. So like all those different cities that you just saw, it's not by accident that you see people living in one place, businesses happening in another place, industrial complexes happening in another place. It's on purpose. So this is all about zoning and like where you decide things in the city will exist, right? So in terms of residential zoning, you can develop laws around the size of buildings, around the density, how many people can live in each one, and even around the diversity of that neighborhood. Okay, so this is Chicago in the year 2000. And so you can see all the pink dots are white communities, all the blue dots are black communities, green is Asian, orange Hispanic, and then there's another dot as well. And this is on purpose, right? So this is like where black communities, black families were allowed to buy houses, where white families fled as a response to that, and then have not like gone back to. And so you have, this like these different neighborhoods that are just sort of walled off. And so, that segregation very, very much exists on purpose, right? You've also got regulations based on commerce, where stores can be, where businesses can be, where can you sell things. You can't just sell them anywhere. You can sell things, based on where you're allowed to set up businesses. And then industrial, so like where things are made, where the manufacturing happens. It may just be easier to do it outside of the city. There's more space. It's cheaper to get a huge warehouse. You're not going to get a massive warehouse in downtown because it would be really expensive, right? That land is expensive. So get the warehouse outside of it and then bring it in and sell it downtown or wherever it makes sense for you to sell your goods. All right, let me take a look at questions that you guys have before I jump into that practice FRQ. So pop in and add your questions, right? So I want to make sure that you guys are getting your questions answered. Let's see. Okay, although these models are outdated, which model would you consider modern New York City? The concentric zone, sector, multiple nuclei, or galactic model? Well, let's go take a look at New York City. So I was kind of searching before for examples, and maybe you've done some more research on this. It kind of feels like a lot of these cities, you kind of have examples of all of it, right? It doesn't really fit perfectly into any of these like models. Just like any model in AP Human Geography, right? Nothing is like perfect. So if we go to New York, all the way to the other side of the world, we have, you really have these, you have your boroughs, you have your central business district in New York would definitely be this like Manhattan area, right? But because there's so many people who live in New York, and because of how rapidly transportation has improved in different aspects of things, you have plenty of people that live in Brooklyn that have a lot of money. You have plenty of people who live in Staten Island that have a lot of money, and people that don't, right? You have tons of like suburbs that have popped up around. And so I would say like New York is probably a really good example of a galactic city, where there's definitely like some places that are sort of forgotten and other cities that have popped up as a result, other parts of the city. But at the same time, you do kind of see these concentric zones still. And there's a massive, subway system. And so people will set up shop on the subway lines, right? And because it's such a massive subway system, it makes it easier to live anywhere. So, galactic. Right, galactic. So like you have, the inner city tends to be more like dilapidated, and then the outer city tends to be where more the money is. And then edge city would be where you have these other cities popping up. So it's kind of all of them, which I know isn't what you want to hear, but that's my opinion on it. Would the Hoovervilles during the Great Depression be considered shanty towns? You bet, right? Totally. They were just called Hoovervilles because they were just a jab to President Hoover. So rather than call them shanty towns, let's just, blame President Hoover for them. So yeah, I mean, those would definitely be considered that. Generally, shanty towns are like either temporary or like semi-permanent. In Latin America, you'll see them become a lot more permanent. They're extending beyond generations, and so they're not just like tents. They have structures to them. They're not necessarily like super strong structures, but they're more permanent than what you would have seen in the Great Depression. Okay, so I'm gonna click done answering. Hit me with more questions if you got more questions. I'm here for you. Okay, so definitely add them in of whatever you're wondering about human geo. I will help you out. Okay, so I wanted to show you really quick, like, what would this look like on the exam? You're not gonna just see, like, here's a city, identify which model this is. It's not quite like that. I mean, I guess it could be, but you really need to be able to, like, this was a question in 2008 on the exam, and I think this does a really good job of showing you like how these models may appear in the free response question. And so basically what it's asking is about the von Thunen's model of agriculture, right? That's where you have the marketplace. It's very much similar, right? You have the marketplace, you have like where you would then have like goods that need to be transported quickly, and then you kind of keep going outward until the outskirts would be like timber, right? Things that are heavy that could be brought in, or maybe on the like full outskirts you have like cattle, right? You don't want them close to the people because of disease, but they can kind of walk into the city. And so this question is basically saying to compare them, compare what the concentric, Burgess's model looks like, compare that with von Thunen's model. And so what you have to do is that you have, in part A, it's asking to just identify the type of land use the model addresses. And so you would just literally have to say that von Thunen is rural or agricultural, and that Burgess is a city. And so just knowing which one is what, like a lot of AP Human Geography is just definitions, right? So if you can just start like truly memorizing some of these terms, you're going to be in a great spot. Like that's, I hate to like say put it that way, but that's kind of what this exam rests on. Similar to the psych exam, it's just like know the words. In part B, here it's asking you to identify two assumptions that are shared by both models. So someone put in a chat. Don't both models not take into consideration of other factors that help a settlement grow? Yeah, right. So there's assumptions that are made. The cattle needs more land for live, and like you said, the more land, more money. Assumptions, like a guess. Yeah. So let's look. So here's the best part about when you study with past questions is that you can find the answers. So what they do is they not only post, here's what the question was, but they also post scoring guidelines. You can see what you would have had to say to earn that point. So put in the chat, what would be an assumption that both von Thunen and Burgess made? Something that they just isn't necessarily true about all cities, but this model has to assume something. So what are some assumptions that are made? That it's not totally a guess. It would be really like you're making an assumption that's basically saying that all cities are the same, right? And so like what would be a specific assumption that's being made here? I'll give you a second to come up with some ideas. And I'm not going to show you yet what the answer is. Cities wouldn't grow in height like skyscrapers. Okay, rapid growth due to industrialization. All will develop the same. Yeah, that's a big one about like developing at the same pace. Rapid growth. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So, well, first, that part A, so you would have had to say, both, but you would have gotten a point if you said Von Thunen was rural and Burgess was urban. Then in part B, here was a bunch that they said. So some of the assumptions. Isotropic flat plane or uniform surface, right? So assuming that there's no mountains or rivers, it's just like, here are these circles. But I can't live here if there's a massive, lake. So it's assuming that it's just featureless. Importance of centrality, right? It's assuming that central market is the most important thing of that city, which, as you've seen in some of these other cities, there are more than one, right? So it's not going to be perfect. There's other places. Individuals maximize profit, minimize cost, maximize use, right? The idea that like the best thing is the cheapest and most profitable at the same time isn't always true, right? That doesn't fit for like Islamic cities where the center would be a mosque. That has nothing to do with business. So how do you then figure out what it looks like? Those concentric circles may be different. Transportation costs, right? So in some cities, it's a lot cheaper to get from A to B than in others. And just actual distance and whether or not there's a subway, highways. Single market or CBD, so whether or not that CBD is the most important part of the city. All right, so basically to get this, so there's 2 points available. And so, the question asks, identify 2 assumptions. So all you gotta do in that question is just say, these are 2 things that both of these models assume is true in all places. So plenty of options that you could have stated. Then for part C, the last thing you have to do is says for each of the models, so for both of them, you need to explain how relative location affects land use patterns. All right, so let me jump over to this one. Okay, so this one was actually giving you 4 points. You would got a point for identification of each of the model's effects and a point for each of the 2 explanations. Okay, so explain how relative location affects land use patterns. So you would have had to explain the effect or identify the effect and explain it for both. And so it's 4 points, right? So 1 point for this, 1 point for this, 1 point for this, 1 point for this. Okay, so this is saying, so here are some of the examples. So Von Thunen, in the agricultural model, you have, an effect of relative location to like the city center would be like intensive land use near the market, right? So you're gonna build and put a lot on the land near the market because you want to be as close as possible. And an explanation of that is that you need to make high profits because it's expensive to live there. Or, some of what we were saying, like the fact that wood or, perishable products are close to the market. Well, it's because we need to transport it quickly, otherwise they'll go bad. Right, so just general, like relative location, right? So like why? What does it mean to be close to that city center? Right, why is there extensive agriculture outside? Well, it's cheaper to have land, it's cheaper to transport light materials, all those different factors. Some good review. Right, and then if we look at Burgess, it's kind of same thing, right? It's similar, right? So it's like intensive land use near the CBD, where we're gonna build these high rises, we're gonna put a lot of industry there. And why? Because it's really expensive. And so if I'm gonna buy land near the downtown area, I want to build up. I want to build a skyscraper, and I want to sell a lot of apartments rather than just building one. Intensity or density of residential land use. So like the further out you go, the more land there is, right? So there you can afford transportation, and there's going to be more residential areas outside of it because people are moving away to then commute in. The fact that the higher classes are at the edge of the city in the United States, this is because they want larger homes, right? And they can afford transportation. So I think there's more than just, sometimes there's more than just like what's on here that you could have said, but that's basically how, this would be tested. It appeared on the 2008 FRQ, so, can't say for certain if you'll see it again. But this is exactly how it'll look. And I highly recommend that as you are studying in the next, month, that you are practicing as many FRQs as you possibly can. And if you search, actually, I'm going to pull this link for you. All AP Human Geo FRQs. We've done some of this work for you. We pulled all of the past questions ever asked on the Human Geo exam, and then organized them by topic. So you can see you can practice them, and you can write as many as you can, just based on like kind of cutting through the different units. So we just organize those by units for you, so you can go through and practice the ones that you need to, based on all the ones that have been asked. So highly recommend doing that. This one question up here of like, let me post the question. And then this will be the last question that I'll answer tonight. But should I study vocab or models more? You should study both of them. You should see models as vocab, right? You need to know what, like that question right there, the one that we just did, that FRQ, if you don't know what the von Thunen model is, that question becomes really, really difficult. If you know what von Thunen is, if you know what the Burgess model is, it's a lot easier to then say the effects of them, or the explanations of why. And so those two things really go hand in hand. I highly recommend that your study plan in the next month includes two things, right? So like this is the takeaway. Study the vocab, use Quizlet or note cards or any other way that you can start timing yourself. You want to pull all the vocab from the whole year that was necessary to know. You can go by unit or whatever works for you, and make sure that you're familiar with them. Like if you actually just make note cards, you're in a good spot, because just the process of writing them and sorting them is studying. Right? That is what it is. And so you can use Quizlet, because Quizlet people have already done it, and they have games that you can play. But even if you just get some note cards and just start writing them and just start sorting into, I have no idea what this word is, I kind of know this word, and I super know this word. And you just keep going. And so you can get all the words over to I super know what this is. And add the models into that. Make a note card for the model, so that you just be able to identify, like, what is this used for? What are some assumptions that it makes? Is it accurate? Where might we see this? Just some of those like basic things, and put those into your vocab. And then second, do as many FRQs as you humanly can. Go through the list. I didn't even put this. Oh, no, I did. So go through the list. All I did on that blog is I was linking from College Board, just so that you have them tagged by the right unit. Go through the FRQs, practice writing them. Look at the guidelines. If you just search, like if you're doing the practice one from 2013, then you can just search 2013 guidelines and just sort of follow that to even grade yourself. These ones are a lot, like out of all of the AP exams, these ones would maybe be one of the easier ones to grade yourself, because it literally is just like, did you do these things? Whereas like the histories, it's a lot more subjective. So study vocab, practice FRQs, and I'm gonna leave you with that. So next week, same time, same place, we're gonna be doing urban issues, right? This is basically the last new content. We'll talk about sustainability. We'll talk about all the different things that come up in cities that need like solutions. And then after that, we're going to be fully in review. So then we're going to do a session on Unit 1 and 2, session on 3 and 4. We're just going to go all the way back and just start cutting through all of them. So get it on your calendar, the AP Human Geography Fiveable reviews. I want to make sure you're passing this exam. I want to make sure that on exam day, you're hella confident and you're feeling like, I got this, There's nothing like waking up and just being ready. And so that's the goal. If you're not yet a Fiveable Plus member, highly recommend checking out Fiveable Plus. Between myself at the beginning of the year and Dustin the rest of the year, we've got tons of videos for Human Geo and all the slides and everything up that I think are going to be huge help for your exams. You can check out our web app so you can bounce around. You can learn some study ideas and hopefully become a member, because we'd love to have you. During exam week, for only Fiveable Plus members, we're going to be doing extra reviews, kind of just cramming last minute for the exam. And so that'll be a members only stream, but everything else is free to attend. All right, if you're still in the chat, hit me with a number 1 through 5 again, or an emoji if you're feeling emoji-licious. How are you feeling right now? How are you feeling about this content? Or AP Human Geo in general? How are you feeling? Give me a number, give me an emoji, whatever makes the most sense for you. I'm personally feeling, but I'm feeling exhausted. But I'm feeling great about Human Geo. All right, so we got some 3.5s, 3s, 8s. That's good. 3, little monkey. -5. That's not what you want. All right, well, we're moving in the right direction. We're going to get there. If you're feeling stressed out, just start somewhere, Just start going back through, start learning some vocab, watch a few replays, do a couple things, and we'll slowly chip away at it. All right, y'all, I'm out for tonight. I'm going to see you next week. I'm going to hold you to it. Dope. Oh, yeah, it's cold. I know it's like snowing outside. I'm not about this life. All right, bye.